Yo, what's going on? My name is Bobby, and I am an expression of the cosmos. I am an expression of the entirety of the cosmos. I am a part, but also a fractal of the whole. Everything, every part of the whole contains the whole within it. And that is the truth, I believe. So, the preliminaries to what I want to talk about, I guess, are the focus of all that I say is around the experience of unity, non-duality, oneness with the universe and everything that you consider to be external to your body. So I've had a few of these, I have this experience very regularly actually. I've had a few experiences that have really transformed the way that I perceive reality and myself as an individual, and progressively, obviously it's not a constant state, but progressively it has become more regular, and yeah, I just can feel like I can get myself into a thoughtless state more often, where everything flows and there is no real resistance. So yeah, the preliminary is that everything, all my philosophical insights, anything that I say is coming from a place orientated around that experience of oneness, that the individual self or ego has no actual substantial reality. It only exists in relation to another, for example in society or in a family or in any relationship. You build that sense of self based on the reactions to things in the external world. So essentially, as Alan Watts says in one of his lectures, that follow any thought to its logical conclusion, so follow it all the way through the line of reasoning. For example, being selfish, or looking at the dark side, the shadow which exists within every human being, looking at that within yourself, say a negative thought or a selfish thought, and then really following it through and finding the source and trying to find this self which you so want to preserve, an individual self separate from the rest of the universe, is actually, it's impossible to find. So that even that line of inquiry can lead to an experience of mystical unity with the rest of reality, because the only thing that separates us is our thought process. It's the process of language, especially the language that we have and the way it is structured logically, that makes things things, because inherently things aren't solid, separate entities. They aren't individual things. They are processes and activities, as you can see with quantum mechanics. The very core of reality is not a thing, it's an activity or a process. So as with everything we interact with, as with the self, there is no real substance at its core. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that when we think about things, we automatically are positing that the self, the individual self, is a real entity. So once you can actually comprehend that in itself language is fundamentally structured to separate things and to dissect things into divisible parts, then you'll realize that the way to experience oneness is through the lack of this thought, through the quieting of that constant chatter, and through the stillness. And I don't think that sitting down to meditate inside is really the most effective way to harbour this stillness within you. I think it has its benefits in that it can almost be used like a concentration training, because every time you, and just to make this clear, I am coming with this information from my own experience, but also from my own research and from pulling from as many sources as possible. So it's original in my expression of it, but it's not original in all the ideas, if that makes sense. So sitting meditation, it's like a bicep curl for your mind. I'm definitely just recycling that. It's a bicep curl for your mind in the form of concentration, because as you probably know, our society now doesn't want consumers to have prolonged concentration. It wants to dissect that concentration as much as possible. For example, with social media and notifications on phones and all sorts of things that constantly just chop up that concentration so they can profit ultimately from just this drive to have instant gratification. So the opposing side of this is to be able to have prolonged concentration, so then you can actually do things which require hard work in order to get bigger results in the long run and to be able to actually live a more fulfilled life. So back to the meditation. It is like a bicep curl for your concentration, because you have an intention, and it doesn't have to be anything. It can be, it doesn't have to be one specific thing, like for example holding it to your breath, although this is a very effective method because it's a universal thing that we all can experience. The important thing is that you have an intention, and not that you even stick to that intention, but that you keep bringing your attention back to that intention. So by that I mean, for example, if your intention is to focus on a mantra, for example, Om Namah Shivaya is Shiva, the Hindu Godhead's mantra. So you repeat this mantra and your intention is to maintain your awareness on the sound. So every time your awareness moves from that sound, you bring it more in line with that sound. And every time that you do move your attention back to that sound, that is one rep, essentially. And I'll always stress as well that in the most part, mantra meditation for a beginner is easier than silent meditation or trying to focus on your breath. So maybe begin with that. And silent meditation, you could have the intention of focusing on your breath, feeling the sensation of your breath, or you could have the intention of feeling the sensation of being in a body, in this physical body. And this is where it kind of leads on to the fact that I don't believe that this is the most effective way of being able to achieve stillness, mental stillness. I feel like it has its place, definitely, but I think we're mistaken if we think that meditation, as in sitting still inside in like a house or wherever you're doing it, is the most natural way to do it. So another way that I've found to be very effective is movement, and especially like mobility work and yoga and stretching, because I feel like the more space I have in my body, I have like specific movement and mobility routines, although they're not fixed, they're just broad outlines, to try and move every single part of my body, starting with my eyes, even my neck, my shoulders, my spine, twists, hips are a big part as well. Just try and find that space in your shoulders and everywhere in your body, your wrists, your ankles. Finding that space translates directly to your mental state, I believe. So just movement and trying to get to that space with thoughtlessness, I think, is easier with movement. Another really powerful thing is just being outside in nature, even just getting fresh air, I think brings a lot of clarity and stillness that you weren't even maybe consciously thought of before. Just going for a walk can be more effective than trying to sit down. And it brings me back to the idea that constantly, and this is another Alan Watts idea, that having something that you need to do in order to achieve this state is ultimately paradoxical, because you don't need to do anything to be connected, because you are the universe already. In whatever conscious state you're in, you are it. It's only the thoughts that are getting in that way. So if you have the thought that I need to meditate this morning so I can feel connected, it's backwards, because you are positing that you are an individual existence or an individual self that isn't in any way interwoven with the rest of reality, that needs to sit down, focus on the breath in order to feel that they're connected again. But if you just think about the fact that it is your thought process, that you are using this language, and that is the way that thought is logically structured as well, that I need to meditate in order to feel connected. Just stop thinking about that, like just do some movement, and then, but you don't even need to do anything, that's the thing, because the moment you think you need to do something is when you are removed. You're almost removing yourself from the connectedness with that thought. So yeah, it's a bit of a paradox, and that's just the nature of our language, so it's a difficult one to really overcome. But I think if you're aware of the fact that our language is structured in this way, and you constantly remind yourself that your language And it's not just speaking, it's because your language isn't inherently the way that you think. Maybe more for me, because I find that I think very much in a linguistic way, whereas some people might be more symbolic or visual, so it may be a bit different for other people, but I find that yeah, keeping that in mind really helps me. So essentially I'm going to be just talking about stuff that's on my mind and try to come at it with absolutely no ego, for no reason other than to help people. And if anyone resonates with what I'm talking about, then I'd love to hear from you, and I want to just grow with people. Like I'm no means at some sage-like state. I have things that I'm like trying to overcome, and I'm in the very much beginning process. I'm at the very much beginning of this process. So of just figuring out what the hell's going on in this reality. But I think the main focus is to just enjoy it, because why else would it be here? We are the source alienating itself from itself in order to have this experience of contemplating itself again, being able to actually separate itself in order to be able to think about itself. So it's an absolutely amazingly beautiful thing that we are a part of, and just look at us, like we're just part of the cosmos. We're inherently a part of it. We need to breathe oxygen from the trees. We need to eat things externally from us. We're by no means separate, self-sustaining entities. So yeah, I just want to help other people in any way I can, really, and hopefully in turn it will help me in being able to just progress and grow as much as possible, and to be able to really manifest this creativity which is inherent to this flow-like state when you have no thoughts. It's just, and that's one of the reasons that I just want to keep this as simple and as just non-egoic, and I don't want to show you a picture of like me on a perfect day, perfectly edited, perfectly scripted. This is just purely from my heart space, and there's no real thought going on for the whole of this video. It's just purely, I guess, channeled from a space that is beyond thought. So yeah, that's pretty much it. These are the preliminaries which I want everyone to, I guess, just to be able to absorb before I talk about other things. So it has a bit more of a context. This is the space that I'm coming from, and this is what I want the whole of the human race to be able to understand. So there's less resistance and there's less suffering, because when it's all put into perspective that you are the universe experiencing itself in a finite form, I think everything is put into perspective and the stress can just dissolve away. So I want that for people. I want to be able to spread that. Thank you. Much love.